A climate crisis in Florida is putting cities at risk. Could rising water submerge the state? I'm Elaine Reyes in Washington, D.C., and this is America's Now. First up, flooding in the U.S. state of Florida has reached alarming new heights. As sea levels rise and severe weather persists, residents are finding themselves drenched by the deluge.
With increasing time, we're finding that the conditions are more severe than we were initially thinking.
So if climate change...
Correspondent John Zarella reports on the climate crisis engulfing Florida. He'll tell us about the costs, concerns, and forecast for the future. Next, a mountain climber from Venezuela who believes in nature's power to change. He brings kids from different backgrounds together to teach them how to climb and sees them change in other ways too.
When you are passionate, there are no limits or barriers.
For this week's Game Changer, meet the creator of Children on the Summit, Marcus Tabaya. And later, Brazil is home to the largest number of Koreans in Latin America. Most of them arrived hoping to begin a better life, and most settled in Sao Paulo.
60 years ago, we were rehearsing the Brazilian national anthem, and later we will arrive in Brazil. How wonderful.
Correspondent Stephen Gibbs talks to one Korean man who relocated to the country's capital over 50 years ago. Now at 80, he has one last wish: to go home. Welcome to the show. After months of laying the groundwork and weeks of negotiating, close to 200 countries signed a historic climate change agreement in Paris last December. The legally binding deal will reduce greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, with China and the United States leading the way. But it may not come soon enough for the U.S. state of Florida. Many there consider it the most vulnerable place in the world. And they're not just talking about rising sea levels, they're already living with it. So what's being done? What can be done? We sent correspondent John Zarella to find out.
This is a snapshot of Florida. In Fort Lauderdale, cars plow through water, in some places a foot deep. For longtime residents, it's nothing new.
So you've seen this kind of flooding all the time?
Oh yeah, every year. Gets a little worse every year.
It's much the same on Miami Beach. 300 miles north in St. Augustine, the oldest fort in the United States, the Castillo de San Marcos, sits high and dry, for now, on the edge of Matanzas Bay. But just outside the fort, the parking lot and nearby streets are flooded. In all fairness, these are not everyday images. In fact, to some extent, this has been happening for decades, whenever you coupled astronomical high tides with a full moon. The problem is, the frequency of these events is increasing, and the water is getting higher. And what you are looking at is not flooding from rainwater, it's salt water. It is, scientists say, rising sea level, pushing in at every chance it gets. The first blush effects of climate change that may eventually change forever Florida's landscape.
That's one of the real problems.
Brian Soden is an atmospheric scientist at the University of Miami.
It would be very different. There, you know, if you take 3 feet of sea level rise, certainly the island that we're talking from right now, most of it would be underwater. You had most of Key Biscayne over there would be underwater. Most of the western half of Miami Beach would be underwater. And you continue downtown Miami, a lot of areas there would be very close, if not underwater.
How much equipment is available to...
Jennifer Girardo heads Broward County's Department of Natural Resources and Planning.
We tend to end on the side of conservatism when we think about these future conditions and say, well, we can't possibly imagine that scenario. But with increasing time, we're finding that the conditions are more severe than we were initially thinking.
Florida is considered ground zero for climate change and its effects. It's like a bad disaster movie. According to one climate study, $145 billion in property values lies just 3 feet, that's it, just 3 feet above the current high tide line. And how high is the water likely to rise?
Well, for sea level rise in Miami, it could be anywhere from 1 to 2 feet by the middle of the century or 3 to 5 feet by the end of the century.
Schools, road, sewage treatment plants, hazardous waste dumps, and a power plant are at the same 3-foot elevation.
So if climate change in and of itself isn't bad enough, scientists say throw a hurricane on top of that higher water, and what would have been a bad storm becomes catastrophic.
Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida in 1992. Its powerful winds punished and pummeled the region. Homes, buildings, businesses leveled. But storm surge, water that's pushed inland by a hurricane, did far less damage. Scientists say the outcome will be far different and far more devastating when the water is higher.
So you're saying that if you took Andrew and you raised the sea level 3 feet, you would have water all the way to the west coast?
Yep, we've done model simulations using the National Hurricane Center storm surge model. You add 3 foot of sea level rise to the same storm, it overtops the ridge and goes all the way into the Everglades, so it just keeps going west.
So, against that backdrop of seemingly inevitable doom, what can you do?
Urban planners say there are really just 3 choices. You can defend, you can abandon, or you can adapt. Adapting seems to be the most logical because no one wants to abandon, and to defend means you'd have to have a crystal ball to know exactly what you were defending against.
But the instinct is to defend first and adapt when you're out of options. So if you're the city of Miami Beach, you fight to keep your head above the water. Water they call, not so affectionately, sunny day flooding.
We're in defend and adapt.
Jimmy Morales is city manager.
I mean, the reality is, you know, if we can buy 100 or 200 years to a great community, why not? I mean, you know, that's generations of people who can grow up here and live here and thrive here and hope that those long-term solutions can be addressed. There's no reason to abandon the short term just because none of us know. 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, who knows what's going to happen to this world?
Miami Beach is one of the most recognizable and desirable cities in the world. And who doesn't know South Beach and its sizzle? It's a booming, bustling city. With so much on the line, local officials have been moving quickly to hold back the tide. They simply couldn't afford to do nothing. Now, Miami Beach is considered the leader in adapting and defending.
We have a plan, a 5-year plan, maybe a little longer than 5 years, estimated about $400 million. We're probably 20% of the way through that, so $80 to $100 million. We're probably you have spent or in the process of spending with projects that are already in the ground.
The first of some 60 massive pumps have already been installed in low-lying areas. Some streets and sidewalks have been raised 2.5 to 3 feet. Officials say the design is working. The streets here no longer flood, but that's just the beginning. Seawalls will have to be rebuilt higher, and on Miami Beach, there are 60 miles of seawall along the bay and canals.
We're doing our piece here, and hoping that while we're sort of in that race to defend and slowly adapt, that at some point state and federal governments will begin to put significant resources into it, manpower, scientific research, to help us and other communities. Because, we may be at the front line, but with the water rising, that front line is going to be impacting a lot of communities.
St. Augustine is one. The famous fort on Matanzas Bay is the centerpiece of a vibrant city, fueled, like Miami Beach, by tourism. People walk the promenade along the picturesque waterfront. But like its neighbors to the south, St. Augustine gets its share of high water, too. These images were taken in December 2014.
Okay, so this is one of our type of backflow prevention valves that we install or retrofit on all of our storm sewer systems.
Reuben Franklin is a city engineer. The backflow preventers are what the name implies. They prevent seawater during high water events from backing up into the sewer system and flooding streets.
Yeah, this is something that benefits us in the short term, something that we can do as a municipality with our yearly budgets to work on strengthening, beefing up our storm sewer system to protect us from climate change.
But so far, only about a dozen of the 103 backflow preventers needed have been installed, leaving the city with little defense against high water.
It is part of our daily life. Is flooding at full moons and new moons and big northeasters that blow water back up in the intercoastal waterway. I mean, flooding is an issue, and sea level rise is real.
A horticulturist, Bill Hamilton's family has lived here since the 1950s. Water, he says, is not the only sign the environment is changing.
That's a black mangrove, and it is an indicator species that identifies this area is under the effects of global warming.
Because this would not have been here in the past, right?
Exactly. Historically, the farthest northernmost community of black mangroves was at Marineland, which is 4 miles south of here. And now this species extends way farther north and has become a really dominant species.
Other, even more worrisome signs are beginning to surface. Far away from St. Augustine sits Florida Bay at the southern tip of the state. The 850 square mile estuary may, scientists say, be approaching a catastrophic collapse. Fish disappearing, dying seagrass, and algae bloom. There are many contributing factors, but one of them, researchers say, could be climate change. Warmer temperatures and less summer rainfall to balance the system.
This is Fort Lauderdale, and this is high water, salt water. Residents have been dealing with this for years when you put a full moon and high tide together. But in recent years, it's gotten a lot worse.
You can count on the flooding like clockwork. 8 a.m. November 25th, we knew when the water would be high. And take a look at these images. In low-lying areas, street after street flooded, businesses with water up to their front doors. In years past, many of these spots were considered in a 1 in 100 year flood zone. Not anymore.
We're not flooding once every 100 years. We're flooding for 15, 20 days at a time throughout the course of the year, just with high tides, absent any rain. I think that we all appreciate that the next 10 years are really critical. I think that we need a comprehensive plan, a finance strategy to do many of the things that we know just need to be done.
Climate change has been a tough sell in many places because the effects may not be noticeable for 50 to 100 years. But it's a bit easier to convince folks in Florida. They are already driving through it, walking through it, and riding bicycles through it. Bottom line, dealing with it.
There's no better place to live than here, so I'm not leaving, and I'll deal with this water right now.
So it doesn't bother you because it's only a few times a year.
Took off my running shoes, took off my socks. I'll get out of the water and we'll head to finish our run.
Before the water gets any higher.
Scientists say the warming climate will produce an increasing number of heavy rain events around the world, bringing with it catastrophic flooding.
Coming up.
A Venezuelan expedition into integration.
Inspirando la sociedad a través de we want to continue to inspire society with stories by ordinary children set to do wonderful things in life.
America's Now.
Welcome back. It's been more than 60 years since Sir Edmund Hillary and his guide reached the summit of Mount Everest, the world's highest peak. Since then, some 4,000 climbers have made it to the top, including the first Venezuelans, Marcus Tabaya and his team. For over 20 years, he's trained Venezuelan, Nepali, and Inuit children how to climb and trek in different parts of the world. The project is called Children on the Summit, teaching them courage, discipline, and perseverance. Marcus Tabaya is this week's game changer.
Soy arquitecto de profesión y esencialmente montañista y amante de la naturaleza. Mi nombre es Marcos Tobías, soy de Venezuela. Nací en Caracas. Caracas tiene una montaña que es el Ávila y siempre tuve el deseo de subir para ver qué había detrás. Y veía de manera evidente la transformación que ejercía la montaña en la gente y sobre todo en los niños. Niños que no tienen experiencia previa, cómo un proyecto, un sueño puede transformarle la vida. Y así comenzó todo, ¿no? Que esos niños vivan una experiencia de montaña y que la gente cuando lo vea pueda también sentir un poquito esa energía que ese niño está viviendo. La primera temporada la hicimos en Venezuela, en los Andes. Participaron niños de aquí de los Andes, de diferentes estratos sociales, de barrios donde la inseguridad es muy difícil, cosa que cómo poder congeniar diferentes realidades de niños, completamente interesantísimo lo que pudimos ver allí y digno de ejemplo de lo que podría ser una sociedad. La segunda temporada la hicimos parte en Nepal y parte en Venezuela. Incorporamos a 7 niños en Nepal, una niña de un orfanato de un amigo que está en Katmandú, seleccionamos algunos niños de la región del Khumbu, donde está el Everest, traímos a los niños de Nepal a Venezuela, subieron al pico Humboldt aquí y después nos fuimos con 14 niños venezolanos al Himalaya, donde escalaron una montaña de más de 6.000 metros. Entonces, 15 niños, 5 idiomas, diferentes maneras de ver la vida y se pusieron de acuerdo. Le están diciendo a toda una sociedad, mira, si nosotros nos pusimos de acuerdo para lograr algo, como una sociedad no se puede poner de acuerdo si tiene el mismo idioma, la misma forma de ver la vida. Y bueno, esa es un poquito la esencia también del proyecto. Que la gente pueda vivir, que se siente inspirado por estos niños. Ahora tuvimos una experiencia maravillosa con unos niños de esquimales para participar en la tercera temporada. Y en Venezuela decidimos hacer la expedición en la selva, en el Aullante Puy, donde está el Salto Ángel, y decidimos también involucrar a la gente de allí a través de 2 niños. Creo que fue la primera expedición de niños de esa magnitud en el Aullante Puy.
Querían un niño de Mérida para participar en Niños en la Cumbre y eso nunca me olvida. Se me hizo realidad viajar, me impresionó la religión, a quién adoran allá, conocer distintas cosas que antes yo no conocía, pues ni sabía que iba a hacer eso, iba a viajar tan lejos. Marco con eso está haciendo algo bueno porque está compartiendo cultura. Por ejemplo, los de Caracas, que nunca habían visto un pico así, les enseñó a que hay que cuidar el ambiente para que, por ejemplo, no se deteriore la nieve, porque si no, no va a quedar nada, sino todo destrozado por la contaminación.
Estas culturas, tanto la Inuit como la Pemona, la Camaracota, tiene un elemento que a mí me llama mucho la atención. Antes las culturas valoraban mucho el conocimiento y la sabiduría del viejo, del anciano, cosa que hoy en día está ocurriendo lo contrario. Esta sociedad donde la tecnología apabulla, el anciano, el sabio, queda marginado. Es bueno tener un teléfono y gozar de la tecnología, pero tienes que entender que vives en un planeta, eres un ser viviente y debes de alguna manera siempre tener eso ligado. Yo creo que cuando tú ves a una persona feliz y alegre, eso llena. Y cuando tú ves que te llama un padre y te dice, mira, mi hijo tuvo una transformación increíble, o cuando tú despiertas una pasión por ese niño porque le gusta el medio ambiente y capta un poquito lo que tú le quieres transmitir, de buscar el equilibrio en las cosas, que eres parte de un ecosistema. Sí queremos que esto continúe. Claro, con todas las dificultades que tenemos, por supuesto cada vez se hace más cuesta arriba, pero por lo menos queremos seguir con ese mensaje de optimismo y seguir inspirando a la sociedad a través de pequeñas historias que van a contar niños comunes y corrientes, ¿no? Pero que al final van a hacer cosas maravillosas en su vida, estoy seguro. Detrás del niño en la cumbre hay una pasión. Y cuando eres apasionado no hay límites, no hay barreras. Cuando ves que un niño se esfuerza y que un niño termina llorando por el esfuerzo, eso es contundente, eso llega directamente. Más allá de un adulto de pararse frente a una cámara a hablar de valores, ¿no? Venga chamo, que llegó. Venga chamo, que llegó.
Marcus recently brought a group of young Venezuelans to Greenland's icy tundra, then some of Greenland's kids to the jungles of Venezuela. Much of the experience is the cultural exchange. We'd love to have your input, so if you know someone who's helping change the world, drop us a line at an@cctv-america.com or tweet us at cctv_America and tell us about a game changer you would like to see on America's Now.
Coming up.
A Korean man in Brazil longs for home.
I want to visit my homeland. When you get old, everybody who lives abroad misses the family, misses the homeland. I feel it.
America's Next.
Welcome back to America's Now. Brazil's Korean population is the largest in Latin America, with some 50,000 claiming full or partial Korean ancestry. A small number of them came over when the Korean War ended back in 1953. About 75 prisoners of war decided not to return to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Correspondent Stephen Gibbs spoke to one man from the DPRK still living in Brazil, who in his twilight years wants to make a difficult and perhaps impossible journey home.
Liberdade in Sao Paulo. For centuries, this has been where Brazil's Asian immigrants have come to live. And it's in a restaurant here that we meet Kim, a thoughtful, disciplined man with an extraordinary life story. Kim came to Brazil 59 years ago. He loves this country and says he's eternally grateful to it. But now he's just turned 80, and what he wants to do more than anything else is pay one last visit to his home, North Korea.
Eu queria visitar a terra natal, né? Quando ficar velho, todo mundo, eu acho que será o mesmo se eu viver fora, sem comunicação nenhuma, quando chegar a minha idade. Você não vai sentir saudade de família, saudade de terra natal. Isso com certeza, eu estou sentindo. Visitar meu parente, talvez, não sei se ela está vivo ou morto, mas vamos ver como é que está. Quero visitar minha terra natal, aonde foi criado.
Kim was drafted into the Korean War in 1950. He was then aged just 15. When armistice was declared, he was imprisoned in the South. He then had a choice: stay in South Korea or return to the North. He chose neither. Instead, along with around 100 refugees, he decided to begin a new life on the other side of the world. His first stop on the way to Brazil was India. This on the left is him in 1956 learning the Brazilian national anthem. We showed Kim these images. He had never previously seen a single photograph of himself or any of his compatriots from this era.
Temos 60 anos atrasado, agora rever. Nós estamos treinando para cantar hino nacional. Depois chegar aqui no Brasil, tão maravilha, né? Me dá de expressar o que eu sinto no momento. Olha, ó. Que maravilha, né?
When he arrived in Rio, it was a city and a country he knew almost nothing about.
Sabia que é país muito imenso, continental, terra imenso, pouca gente, clima tropical, tem lugar que é quente, tem lugar que é frio, muito variável, né? Isso que eu sabia. E além de muito pouco povoado. Preocupação meu era como é que eu vou viver. Primeiro tem que aprender língua. Isso que preocupei mais do que qualquer circunstância, né? Eu não aguento enfrentar.
Kim moved to southern Brazil. He began farming and learned to forget Korea.
No momento, quando vivia, eu tenho que viver aqui na terra, né? Aqui no Brasil. Trabalhamos, eu acho que quase pouco tempo para pensar lá na Coreia do Norte. Realmente pouco tempo, porque não tinha nada, tem que lutar, sobreviver. Não foi fácil, foi muito difícil. Estudei e casei e agora tem que lutar, sobreviver, né? A única coisa que eu sempre falo, eu vou cavucar terra para viver. Não quero mais saber de tanto como ideologia, tanto como não. Eu quero viver em paz com Deus.
Happily married with 3 children, Kim now sees himself as much Brazilian as Korean. It's only recently he's felt homesick. And he wonders about the fate of his Korean family.
Minha irmã, mais velha do que eu tenho um irmão mais novo do que eu. São 3.
Do you know anything about them?
Não sei como é que está. Eu acho que meu irmão é homem, né? Talvez prolongou 3 anos de guerra. Talvez foi servir militar, não sei, será que está vivo, não sei. 나저 구야바에 있는 사람입니다.
Earlier this year, Kim made a call to the North Korean embassy in Brasilia.
내 모레 좀 만나보려고.
He was given an appointment to visit. There he was received cordially, but months later he's still waiting to hear if he can make his journey. After speaking to Kim, we all sat down for lunch with another North Korean.
50 미만이에요.
Carlos, as he's now known, is 98. He was the very first of his compatriots to come to Brazil. The son of a noted leader of Korea's early 20th century independence movement, Carlos absconded from the North Korean army, only to then feel persecuted in the south. He has no desire ever to return to either Korea.
생각 없어요. 여기에 정말 여기 자유의 나라요. 누구 나와서 조사하는 적이 없어요. 이 좋은데 우리 가족 다 불렀는데 왜 갑니까? 나는 앞으로 브라질에서 죽을 거고 묘지도 사놨어요. 내 처가 먼저 여전에 가서 묻었는데 묘지도 사놓고 완전히 우리 손자들 다 여기서 취직하고 좋은데 취직하고 잘 살고 있어요. 뭐 나도 아빠도 그래도 한국 사람 치고는 괜찮은 거 그러다 우리 손자애들이 커가지고 내 손자애들이 그래가지고 그 사가지고 지금 편안히 살고 있어요.
It is worth remembering that Kim was a teenager when he was conscripted into a war he didn't understand, never to see his family again. He is an old man now, but the trauma of his youth is raw.
Hay que esto es mi meta. Yo quiero procurar un lugar, paz, descanso, construir uma família que vive bem. Pois até hoje estou cavando a terra. Eu tenho terra ainda. 80 anos de idade ainda estou cavando terra ainda.
If this project succeeds and you do have the opportunity to go back to Korea, what is the most important thing for you?
Queria encontrar minha família, o parente. Isso é a primeira coisa. Queria encontrar família. Mas se pudesse ir lugar onde nasci, pertinho entre China e Coreia, olha assim, rio mais ou menos 500 metros de largura. Tão fácil de visitar. Eu queria que tomara que o governo da Coreia do Norte me permite para visitar a família, né? E maior desejo.
Kim embodies two powerful, sometimes conflicting human desires. He cherishes the peaceful life he's found, but something deep inside him yearns to return to the place of his childhood.
Our thanks to Stephen Gibbs for that report. Kim is still waiting to hear if a journey to his homeland is possible.
Coming up.
Stargazing at a new exhibit with some cutting-edge artists.
These Latinos are all from different cultural backgrounds, Mexican, American, Texan. Justice Sotomayor is of Puerto Rican background, born in the Bronx. She calls herself a New Yorican.
America's Now.
Welcome back. Usually when we think of the word portrait, we think of an oil painting or a photograph with the subject in a formal pose. But a new exhibit at the National Portrait Gallery here in Washington is reinventing the notion of a portrait in a new exhibition. It's called iPop, the Celebrity Gaze. In addition to showing traditional portraits of pop culture icons, it features works of art on a multimedia platform. For example, two of the artists created video portraits. This week's Urban Voices are Bo Gehring and Luc Dubois.
It's an exhibit of contemporary portraits that examines society's obsession with celebrity. Kim Sayed is one of the architects of the exhibition.
I'm the director of the National Portrait Gallery at the Smithsonian, and I want to welcome you to the opening of iPop, the Celebrity Gaze.
iPop also asks, who is in charge of the images we see?
I always think of this kind of this three-legged stool when we're talking about portraiture. The artist is looking at the celebrity,
The celebrity is trying to, in often cases, manipulate or to talk about or to control the image that is being made of them. And then the third part of that still is us, the audience, and how we think about that person in that situation.
The exhibit is a study in how public personalities are produced. Featuring over 50 portraits from contemporary culture, including actors, athletes, and influential figures, you could call it a showcase of eye candy. Among the highlights, a Candyland-inspired Katy Perry, a rough and revealing look at cinema enigma Brad Pitt, and portraits of Latino Americans who have made an impact on the U.S., including Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, actress Eva Longoria, and actor and comedian John Leguizamo.
These Latinos are all from different cultural backgrounds. Longoria is of Mexican-American Texan background. She's a self-described Texican, actually. Justice Sotomayor is of Puerto Rican background, born in the Bronx. She calls herself a New Yorican. And John Leguizamo was born in Colombia and has lived in the U.S. since he was a child.
iPop also introduces us to artists presenting portraiture in a new way. Luc Dubois is one of them, using special video software to construct his work.
And that's, again, and put a different one in, but I'm actually searching for that person rather than the string.
This is a portrait of Sergey Brin and Larry Page, the two gentlemen who founded Google. I have a whole bunch of YouTube interviews of Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and I'm Googling everything they're saying while they say it. So what you're seeing on the screens is their interview footage burned in with Google image results based on what they're talking about, and Google text results based on what they're talking about. So, you know, you look at Sergey Brin and Larry Page, but really what I'm trying to do is get you to walk away thinking about what does it mean to search for something and have the trust a computer to give you the answer.
Another of Luc's creations, a video portrait of pop princess Britney Spears.
I had to download like 5,000 paparazzi photos of Britney Spears and train a computer on them. So I had to teach a computer what she looks like, and then I can pipe in any footage that she's in and it will find her and lock her eyes. If you look at it, the frame is panning around. She's always standing still. Britney Spears particularly has this really interesting role in our culture. You know, she's the first pop star to come of age in the world of auto-tune and Photoshop. You very rarely see Britney Spears unless she's been computationally perfected in some way. There's this kind of tragedy there that I was trying to get at. There's something really heartbreaking about how she's constantly surveilled. We feel this like horrible need that we have to perfect this like beautiful, very talented woman even further with computers. I would identify that as a problem in our society.
Rolling.
Bo Gehring is another cutting-edge artist in the exhibit. During the opening night of iPop, Bo set up a mini version of his signature milling machine to create portraits of the attendees. A former special effects artist, his innovative art came about by accident when he was commissioned to create a new building facade.
Totally serendipity. I mean, it literally popped out of the woodwork, and I tested it and it worked. And the only way to manufacture it, as it turned out, was to buy my own milling machine. And so this is like a thing that's working volume is 5 feet wide by 12 feet long by 1.5 feet, and ordinarily it kind of goes and it mills foam that then goes off to the foundry and is cast.
With the milling machine and a 4K camera that is stronger than the human eye, he's invented a pioneering form of portraiture.
And I'm sitting here looking at this monstrous machine, And I don't know, I have a film background, and it just came to me in a second that you could do things that no camera had ever did before. I began to see that music was, it was just like an extension of clothing, and I saw this when I would ask people when they came in. They always say, well, you choose something, or you make a soundtrack. And I say, no, you don't get it. This has to be the one favorite piece of music you have in the whole world. When I started doing these, HD video was the thing, and the cameras were only about $500, which is what I started with. And now I've gone to a 4K format Sony camera, which captures 4 times as much detail.
Garing relates his experience to American Civil War photographer Matthew Brady, who allowed many to see their photographed image for the first time.
I wanted to be a living personal document. When, in the very early days of portraiture, when Matthew Brady and people long before him traveled with a plate camera and took these amazing images. We live in a media world, but these things were magic. The very first glass plate portraits, and it's always been said that many primitive people who were photographed thought they were soul catchers. I'm going to make the same kind of telling, living, personal, intimate document. I'd like to channel the feeling that let us, not Matthew Brady, but going back into the early 1800s, and I don't remember the names, but when they first pulled those big glass plates out, and people who had never seen a photograph before saw that, that's, if this does 10% of that, it's all I could ever want.
Here it goes.
Once I know the person's height and I know the music, everything is basically fixed. The take is as long as the music.
Pop artist Andy Warhol once said, "In the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. Between the internet, artists like Beau Garing and Luc Dubois, and the innovative portraiture at the National Portrait Gallery, Warhol just might one day be proven right."
Work on all of the 54 iPop portraits began in 2013. The exhibit will run through mid-July at the National Portrait Gallery.
America's Now.
Finally, we head to Peninsula Valdez in Argentina. This is the time where you may find thousands of southern right whales in the warm waters offshore, giving birth and caring for their young. They swim all the way from the Antarctic, but climate change is killing their food supply. We leave you with a look at their beautiful but difficult journey. Thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you again next week for another edition of America's Now.
Es lo que necesitan, la tranquilidad.
La ballena esta va a nadar.
Whales on one level face more threats now than ever before, but now we have the technology. We're living uphill from the oceans, and if everybody takes small actions with regards to their daily behavior, it has an effect on the ocean habitat, and the ocean habitat is as important for us as it is for the whales.